'Twas once upon a Progmas night, and Ian was sitting by the fire bright. He was eating his cookies and looking quite glum, for the first season of his podcast was finally done. He had just been thinking, I hope they've enjoyed this prog rock, when up on the rooftop he heard a very large knock. On down the chimney he heard a swirl of moog, and the fire went out on the Yuletide loog. In a sequined cape and looking quite slick, on down the chimney came good old St. Rick. "Don't look so glum," he said, "don't look sad. You just need to see their faces as you pull the songs from your bag." "Let us away," the golden-haired wizard said, and with a melodious laugh we boarded his sled. On Hogweed, on Catrew, on Wolfhound and Tarkus, on Syrinx, Tiresias, on Crimson and Starless. I felt the cold wind as we rose through the night, and rushing below me the snow gleaming bright. "We will visit 6 people in need of holiday cheer. The first stop," he said, "is a young fellow down here. He's the phantom of the Opera House of Sydney." And with a wink of his eye we popped down the chimney. "O mighty phantom," I spoke to the stage, "I know that your heart has become hardened with rage. I've brought you some music that I hope you might love," when a voice called out from the curtains above, "No one is aware of my backstage toil. I live in the rafters and keep the organ well oiled." "Come down, mighty phantom," I asked him I did, and with a swoosh of his cape down to the stage he slid. So, hello, O mighty phantom. I'm here with Brian, and we are kicking off this Progmas Spectacular with I Believe in Father Christmas by Greg Lake, assisted by Peter Sinfeld. So, when last we left Emerson, Lake & Palmer, we had just finished their debut, but here we pick them up, finishing up their Brain Salad Surgery Tour in 1974, at which point they went on hiatus. So Greg Lake was just hanging out, playing along with basically this new little guitar lick that he had, and called in Peter Sinfeld of King Crimson, and together they wrote this little ditty about the meaning of Christmas, and it is an absolute banger. So it was released as a Greg Lake solo with this backing orchestra, but then it was re-released on the Emerson, Lake & Palmer album Works Part 2. So I guess this is a joint gift from us to the listeners. So this is probably the only prog Christmas song, and it's technically a protest song about the commercialization of Christmas. So the song topped out at number 2 in the charts, beaten that year by
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody. So do you have thoughts on this song?
Well, first of all, Ian, Merry Progmas to you.
Merry Progmas to you.
I had never heard of the song until you gave me this assignment, actually. It slipped under the radar, and I believe I was the one who asked for prog Christmas songs. So the fact there even is a proper Christmas song, it's not, layered into some confusing lyrics. I like how straightforward it is. I do like it. It's kind of charming and strange, and I feel like we don't normally talk about music videos in this podcast, chiefly because very few of them had them. But I think we have to also talk about the Top of the Pops kind of video they produced alongside with it. It's very bizarre and very interesting.
So walk me through that video.
So the music video was created at the expense of £15,000 in 1974, which I imagine would have been a pretty penny back in the day. It portrays Greg Lake in Israel, filmed on location, surrounded by Bedouins in somewhat of a Christ-like position, giving a sermon to the Mount. According to a really interesting interview on Uncut, apparently the Bedouins had no clue what was happening, but it's quite effective. And then the kind of last third of the music video, they've spliced in stock footage from Vietnam and the 6-Day War, some of which is fairly graphic.
Yeah, no, it's shocking.
All the while, the music is swelling
in a shopping mall type of way.
Yeah, it doesn't quite fit because it's like swelling like you would be imagining a ballerina twirling on stage and fun things are happening, and then you're watching people dying. Yeah. And maybe that was the point, but it's quite strange.
So there is a non-orchestral version of this. I believe it actually has Emerson on it, and it feels a lot more like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Yeah, this one goes loud and it goes hard.
I think why I'm getting that like Nutcracker ballet, music vibes is apparently at Emerson's suggestion. Some of the motifs or the riffs were from Prokofiev's Lieutenant Kija. And if you're wondering, did I have to Google how to pronounce both of those words? I did.
It didn't just slip off the tongue. Okay.
Yeah, and that's where I hear the Nutcracker in this. That sort of Russian style, holiday-ish, or what I consider holiday music vibe. And that's the part that I think works. It is, I think, the irony that Greg Lake is trying to get across, but I think the triple irony is this was a smash hit, and he probably made a lot of money from it.
Yep. So he actually had a quote about this. I want to say he commented on his own Guardian article or something when someone said, how does it feel when the Christmas checks roll in? And he says, it feels great, but they don't come till August. Beautiful. So a question about this. Is this the Greg Lake solo song that you've been asking for this whole time?
I think this is such a bizarre little artifact of the heyday of Prog. It's nothing I ever would have suspected. I also think it was successful, probably like a right time, right place. Whereas I think if this was released a different year, it might have just faded into obscurity. But apparently it just hit and the public was ready for it and it was a smash hit, at least in the UK.
I mean, I guess the weirdness is like, you're like, oh yeah, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. They've just done brain salad surgery. I love that song. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Oh my God, their lead singer has come out with a new song by King Crimson's lyricist. This is going to be insane. And then, as you say, I guess it's obviously an ironic take, but what an odd thing this would have been to receive. But now with hindsight, no, actually you're right. It's still just an odd artifact from a crazy time.
I'm glad it exists though.
Yeah.
Because I do like it. I think this will be in my holiday rotation. And I'm questioning if I've heard it before because it has an odd familiarity to it. And maybe I did just hear it in a mall, like background music. But I consciously have not heard this song at the very least until now.
So I will say, like, I have heard this in like Boots in a British store. That's my local knowledge, by the way. So I've heard it in a British store many, many times, just on like the background radio. But I have never heard it in America. I had never even heard of it in America.
So apparently part of the reason why this song had like limited time on Top of the Pops, it was also re-released without the orchestra, is apparently it was because they had to pay all the members of the orchestra. So if they want, a big hit single, I think ideally has as few members on the payroll as possible.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was re-released in 77 without the orchestra.
Okay, yeah. Which is funny because I actually have a working memory of that song. Again, I feel like because they bring in so many of the little Christmas motifs, I just had this feeling like I know the song.
I think the last fun fact, and there's a lot of fun facts if you want to read the uncut article, just Google the making of Greg Lake's I Believe in Father Christmas. I won't read all of them because I think it's worth a read on its own. This was recorded in one take, so the version that you hear is the first and only take they did. And the second fun fact, as we mentioned at the top of the show, was this was number 2 to Bohemian Rhapsody. Greg Lake commented something to the effect of, we want to be number 1, but, it's okay to be number 2 to be one of the greatest songs of all time. The orchestra arranger, Godfrey Salmon, said he thought Bohemian Rhapsody was rubbish, and it still does, and he thought this should be number 1.
Oh, that is some good ancient rivalry.
Which, if the number 1 song that year at the time was like, a Carpenter song or something, I think that quote's fine. But man, Bohemian Rhapsody, if you're coming after any song, that's a
hard door to knock down.
Yeah.
Oh boy, beautiful, fantastic. Next to find Meng, which was a bit of a chore because Whitesnake and Aerosmith and Kiss were all on tour. I could have traveled the world, which would have been silly, but luckily all 3 bands were playing at a festival called Jingle Rock City. I looked through the crowd of uncles in hair, but 'twas a vast sea of denim, I swear. Using deduction, Sherlock Holmes I did channel, 'Twere only 3 vans with the cover of hemispheres on the panel. Merry Progmas. I've come down the old chimney here to visit Mang. Hello, Mang.
Hello.
So I'm rustling around in my bag, as you can hear, and the song I have picked for you is Blowing Free by Wishbone Ash. So, Wishbone Ash was a band formed in 1969 and was centered around the concept of a double lead guitar. They were inspired by the Yardbirds, I believe, but they blended a classic rock sensibility with all of the fantasy and complex musicness of prog. So this blend reached its commercial success and critical success with their 1972 album Argus. So I've chosen Blowing Free because I know you like the more classic rock side of music. So it has the strutting riffs and smooth 3-part vocal harmonies. In addition, it has some of the more normal lyrics that we will ever hear on this podcast. So unfortunately for them, they wouldn't hold on to this musical success, and they would wane in popularity as the famous hard rock bands like Led Zeppelin would rise. But Argus stands as a little glimpse into what hard rock prog could have been. I know you enjoy this classic rock side of prog, so I bequeath this song to you, Blowing Free by Wishbone Ash. So let's start at the top. So your first thoughts on the song. What did you hear with the song?
I'm glad you picked the songs that I can immediately start to appreciate at my muggle level, and then not leaving me flabbergasted for the first 2 spins of those albums.
Yeah, it's an accessible song. Yeah.
Yeah. It's easy to understand, and I like 2 lead guitars, like Thin Lizzy. Also, coincidentally started in 1969. Yeah.
So what do you think that the double lead guitar gave Wishbone Ash? I guess also gave Thin Lizzy, but they're not here now. So what do you think it gave Wishbone Ash?
Okay, more guitar, more fun. Especially for Wishbone Ash, it's almost like a conversation among the instruments.
Yeah. And it's nice to hear counter riffs on top of its texture.
Texture, absolutely. And it only happens when everyone in the band is accomplished in their musicmanship.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays people do lots of, even before, they do many tracks of recording, but it's on recording. And then when you see them live, they manage as well.
To have 2 brains and 2 sets of fingers working at the same time. Yep.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic.
Yep.
Also, it's not just the guitar. The other instruments, like the bass player as well, he's loud. I mean, they made him loud. And he has a very flashy style. And then it can stand out from the guitars. But the drummer's got the jazz thing, which is something special. It doesn't sound weird, but it's...
So you feel like all of the musicians worked together to make a really rich song.
It's interesting.
And I was going to say, what's interesting to me is I think 2 guitars, as kind of happened with the Yardbirds, I think 2 guitars could easily have been an ego explosion and the band could have imploded. But I think in Wishbone Ash it actually wasn't. So I actually think, certainly for this album, you end up with smoother music rather than everyone taking solos and everyone showing off.
When I was watching the footage they had in 1970s.
Like the live concert footage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see everybody at the very front of the stage, and then there's definitely an ego. Everybody's vibing on top of each other.
Okay. You think about Pink Floyd, and even at some points, yes, definitely King Crimson, where at some point the band just explodes on itself. I don't think that ever happened with this band.
Well, good for them.
And maybe I think they always brought in guitarists knowing that they would be co-lead guitarists. And, I don't think Thin Lizzy exploded either. I think if you know that you're going to be playing alongside another guitarist, then you're cool with it. And Iron Maiden, they actually have a pretty stable lineup most of the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe that helps with the ego smoothing.
Yeah, also, like even when they're on the stage, it's not
too much.
Yeah, it's not annoying.
And then let's talk about their singing and their lyrics. So, as I mentioned at the top, their lyrics are probably more normal than prog will ever be. Like, they just seem to be about a girl with golden hair.
Yeah, but there's no storytelling.
I mean, there's definitely no storytelling, but then you think that's probably more normal for music, where, you just have people just singing about nice things. As opposed to Heart of the Sunrise and Roundabout, where they're singing about, well, we don't know what they're singing about.
True.
This is just, he's looking at a nice dream girl, and that's that.
Yeah.
So this is more normal classic rock, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
I suppose, but I was expecting more, maybe.
You were expecting more prog. Okay, next Progmas thing. You're going to get some extreme prog. And actually, what did you think about the 3-part harmony?
Well, it definitely gives them more volume.
Okay.
Because none of them have very, like a big voice like Bruce Dickinson or distinguishable.
They didn't have a front man style singer.
Yeah, or like Rush's singer, Geddy Lee. Yeah, and when they're trying to create a signature with an ordinary build-up.
Yeah.
And also I think the harmony gives them a little bit of mystery to the joyful tune.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do think this is a more interesting song than maybe your average classic rock song, thus progifying classic rock.
Yeah, I just like more brainless stuff, you know.
You want more lizard brain stuff. No, off I go back up the chimney.
With the charcoal
For these other little kids. And away St. Rick took me to the edge of the Cam, which is a river in Cambridge for those of you at Ham. Under a toadstool at the edge of the river, I came to a hut with some songs to deliver. And who should abide in this magical home? 'Twas Rufus and Ed, the two-headed gnome. So ho ho ho, I'm here with Ed. Hello, Ed. So I'm going to reach into my old stocking here. So I left one up on the wall in your stocking, a little stocking stuffer. So we start with Asforteri. So you and I talked about Caravan's album In the Land of Grey and Pink, so their landmark album from the Canterbury scene, and you enjoyed their musical stylings, but lamented their outrageous and dumb lyrics. So this song is from their previous album, If I Could Do It All Again, I Would Do It All Over You. So this is a little stocking stuffer, and I think it does represent for me their excellent songcraft. So it's a little 1-minute burst sung in the round, just a little delightful song. So I was like, this is a manageable version of Caravan.
Yeah, when you sent me this one, I thought, oh, here we go again. But no, this was really nice. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's quite sweet, really. It's this kind of rhythmical ping pong melody that's just bouncing along sweetly. It's just 2 lines repeated, so they don't have the weird lyrical thing. Yeah, really nice. And yeah, I can see why you gave me this one. It kind of inspired me to listen further because, you know, it's quite short. You know, it just goes straight into the next track, and it's just kind of a segment between 2, you know, larger ideas. So I kind of went up one. I listened to Hello and just played through again, and yeah, just ended up listening to the whole album. It was it's really nice, and yeah, thank you for that.
That was just a stocking stuffer, but for the meat now. So we left the Moody Blues after Days of Future Past, but they just kept a-rollin', and at least in the early 70s and late 60s, their sound stayed as smooth. So this whole album is a Mellotron feast, but this song is a Justin Hayward feast and a Mellotron explosion, and I was like, who better to be feasting on Mellotron with some Justin Hayward than Ed? So this is Story in Your Eyes from Every Good Boy Deserves Favor.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. I love the Moody Blues, and you know, everything they do is fantastic. I would say though, this is kind of forgettable. After the song's finished, it's kind of just gone. There's no earworms or anything.
Yeah,
you know, it's a beautifully written song and everything. Justin Hayward's voice is fantastic. But yeah, just once it's done, I'm just like, yeah, next. Just didn't feel like they were, you know, trying to write a hit here. It was just some album fodder, I guess. But, and you know, an amazing album.
Yep.
It just goes to show that's what they write. They write albums, they write beautiful albums.
So one of the interesting parts about the Moody Blues is that their reputation, I think, really took a dive in the later 70s. I don't know if they've been reappraised, because obviously Days of Future Past went down as like a, you know, late 60s classic psychedelic album or whatever. But I think after that, they didn't get huge in the same way the contemporaneous band Led Zeppelin would go on to be massive. So this is 1969. contemporaneous with Led Zeppelin 1 and soon Led Zeppelin 2. And if you think about it, actually, this might even be 1970. I forget exactly what year. I'll say on that edge. Oh, it's already 71. Holy goodness gracious. Anyways, so...
It's interesting that you're surprised by that.
Yeah. No, and I was going to say, I think the thing is that Moody Blues are hopelessly 60s. Like, this feels like late 60s pop, almost in the vein of, like, the Righteous Brothers or something.
Yeah, you're completely right.
And you think about, like, Immigrant Song has already come out. Stairway to Heaven has come out. You know, we're on to classic rock, the beginnings of classic rock. And in the prog world, we're getting into Close to the Edge and Dark Side of the Moon. And we're on that journey. And this feels like they're shaking tambourines and stuff. So it's very interesting you say that they created a forgettable song. Now, I love this song as late 60s pop. It just so happens that it happened in 1971.
Yeah, it's outdated, isn't it? It's not progressive.
Yeah.
Just throwing a little factoid here. There was I was just reading about who's playing what, and there's a point being made that this is the last time you hear the Mellotron.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've upgraded to a new device. It's the Chamberlain that is their synthesizer choice after that. Okay, interesting. Maybe they felt like they've tried all the tricks, but then they've used loads of Mellotron on this one. It's like they're giving it its sort of last hurrah.
Yeah. I feel bad because I would never, ever, ever dissuade someone from listening to late 60s, early 70s Moody Blues. And actually, I would never dissuade someone from listening to the 80s Moody Blues either. They do retain a level of smoothness and a level of kind of pop sensibility. I think it's just funny because they don't challenge you at all. I do feel like it, because you don't have to work for anything, maybe it doesn't stick as hard.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You look at stuff on paper sometimes, you think, yeah, that's going to be perfect, blah, 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 but... sometimes you've thrown the spaghetti at the wall and it's just not stuck. But yeah, ultimately it's a beautiful song, just not memorable.
Yeah. So my next song for you happened in 1985. So Steve Howe was on a break from both Asia and Yes, and Steve Hackett, late of Genesis, had taken a break from his solo workings, and Steve Howe's manager suggested they do a thing. So they came together in 1985 for this one and only album and the subsequent tour. So, GTR was completed with vocalist Max Bacon, bassist Phil Spalding, and drummer John Mover. And they created this one album, GTR by GTR. And we are going to talk about my present for you, Toe the Line. So, it's fascinating to me because this band has two obviously amazing legendary prog guitarists, but no primary songwriters. And obviously Steve Howe did do some songwriting for Yes, but I think he needed John Anderson. And Steve Hackett was really more of a spice guy for Genesis. So they came up with this album and this song, and it is such a bad song. But there's something to this song that I love so dearly. And I was hoping you could illuminate me.
Can I... Well, I would be able to illuminate you if I understood why you thought it was... nice in any way.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so the niceness. So, okay, I'll try and think about why I think it's nice. So, as a song structure enthusiast, I love when they do a pure acoustic intro and then blast into an electric groove, like an electric guitar groove. I love that. And there's just something about like the sparkling guitar that's happening. So Steve Howe and Steve Hackett are obviously each in one ear. But the production is ridiculous. It's so 80s and bad. And the singing is so over the top. Again, it's like that like pure kind of arena rock 80s. Like the whole thing is such obvious garbage. And then the lyrics are so bad that I notice that they're bad.
Yeah.
Like the lyrics are probably the worst I think we will ever talk about on this podcast.
Well, it's like, like a teenager writing their first song. They've got that kind of, well, there's this reference to like sea stuff, shipwrecks and all this sort of stuff. And he just thought, oh my God, it's just so cheesy. It's kind of cringe-worthy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's confusingly bad.
But there is nothing to be confused about when it comes to what the song is. So maybe that's why it's got some redeeming features. It's like it's a power ballad.
Yeah.
And you need it to be like uncomplicated. Yep. Just, lots of dramatic power ballady things going on, and that's all it is. The idea of doing like a Christmas prog episode You know, the thing that comes to mind, I was like, well, clearly there's no Christmas prog songs. There just aren't any. And you know, maybe there's some out there I hadn't heard of. You know, something in the line of, you know, Christmas with the Devil by Spinal Tap or something. But that's kind of what this is. You know?
Okay.
It is slightly festive towards the end when the guitars are in full production mode. But it's like, what's that tell you? It's too cheesy, isn't it? It's why would it have that festive element to it?
Yeah, it's festive. Ugh. It's a festive power ballad. Yeah. There you go. That's why I gave it to you, and that's why I like it. Thank you for illuminating me.
I think it's, you know, when it comes to like guitarists, I think this is not a good time for gear. You know, like I think
it's an 80s.
Yeah,
time.
You know, all the amps have, you know, none of them got any tubes in them anymore. They're just transistory things.
It sounds thin.
It's just a bad sound. But, you know, at the time it must have been great, but it doesn't age well, does it?
And I think the production, in this case actually done by Jeff Downes, I think they love that 80s clear sound. Just, it sounds sterile.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I think that maybe that's kind of, you know, in essence, that is the problem with this whole project. And that is the problem with this kind of this band, the song, and this project, is that it doesn't have soul in any capacity. Like, this is just a power ballad written to be a power ballad. But they forgot every part that makes a good power ballad a good power ballad.
Yeah, it takes a lot of power ballad tropes, doesn't it?
So anyways, thank you for illuminating me.
Moving swiftly on.
I'm warmed at the Yule log of your knowledge.
Very nice.
That's what I got for you. Anyways, I'm going back up the chimney. Merry Progmas.
Thank you, Santi.
So I went back up the chimney. I came back down, and now Rufus is in the room. Hello.
You're in the wrong house.
So I'm rustling around in my sack of goodies.
Oh, please don't rustle your sack in front of me.
I'm rustling my sack of goodies. So Magma was a French freaky jazzy proggy outfit formed in 1969 by Christian Fonda. So two things jump out very quickly about their music. So they did a very jazzy mantra-y style of prog, which they dubbed Zool, which firstly has this very rhythmic building arrangement style. And the second most obvious thing is that all of their songs are in a made-up language called Cobian or something. Apparently, all of the albums are part of one long space opera, but who the heck knows? So all of this strangeness culminates in the 1976 Udu Wudu, and 2 albums later, 1978's Attack, which added elements of soul and funk. So I have given you, Rufus, Udu Wudu, the song, and the last 7 minutes off of Attack. And I guess the very first thing I noticed is I have genuinely never heard any music like this.
No, this is insane. It's
and I think, like, when I think about, like, when I describe music, I'm always like, oh, you know, that's as if Pink Floyd covered Genesis, or as if, like, Led Zeppelin wrote a Yes song or something like that. But this is just jazz as done by French aliens. And we love you, French aliens, but I've never heard any songs like this. How did you experience this?
I experienced it, you know. You're absolutely right. There's so little I can compare it to from, you know, the backlog of what I've heard before.
From normal music.
From all that worldly music that I listen to. But actually, on that point, the one thing certainly Udu Wudu reminded me of was we used to get these little CDs that came in Songlines magazines that my dad would subscribe to, and it would always have absolutely insane shit on that we would kind of listen through month to month. And this is quintessentially the sort of stuff you would find on there, you know.
Okay.
Well produced, very tight musicianship, but absolutely insane at the same time, and worldly as well. It's difficult to talk about Udu Wudu and the last 7 minutes in the same sentence or even paragraph, because although, you know, they are on this sort of jazzy theme, they do feel quite distinct from one another. I think on that, I enjoyed the last 7 minutes more as something to listen to, but I think that is, kind of going back to what you said, a lot more to do with me being able to kind of compare that to what I've heard before and appreciate it.
And it had softened you up.
Yeah, because I have a comparison, I can enjoy it more. Whereas when something is so wild and so different, it's harder to kind of grasp, I guess.
I was going to say, I think for that reason, both of the songs are probably longer than you think they should be, but I think the length is necessary to get you into the vibe, because there's percussive whatever and almost a chant in both of them that really build up. And then I think in the last 7 minutes, because they added soul and funk in that album, you can hear him riffing on James Brown. And you know the famous... It's like the famous Italian song where they're speaking English but not English.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that's what this song is it's the feeling of watching James Brown without any James Brown lyrics.
Right.
Like, it's so funky. And you know, again, that's something I feel like you might have also enjoyed from last 7 minutes. Above and beyond Udu Wudu, which is like pure Cirque du Soleil garbage madness.
Yeah.
Though I love it dearly.
Udu Wudu was very chanty.
It's out there.
Yeah, and
I was going to say, and I think the other really interesting thing to me is because these songs don't have lyrics in any known language or really any melodies, the songs are built purely on dynamics. And so you're feeling a build, you're feeling a descent, you're feeling, you know, kind of a release, but you couldn't have said, oh, that's the chorus.
yeah, it's funny because it's testament to the idea that you don't actually have to be saying anything of substance to make a good song or even a good vocal track. I mean, you know, you can look at Syd Barrett and maybe say the same thing. But in reality, with these guys, they are literally saying gibberish. I mean, it's you know, what it reminds me of is, so there's the video game The Sims, right? And they have Simlish or whatever it's called. Yeah, they're just talking absolute gibberish, and it sounds like one of them's decided to start a jazz fusion prog band.
Similar kind. Yeah. No, but then the funniest thing is you know what they're saying, even if you don't know what they're saying.
Yeah, like, yeah. It's just the intonation. It drives it.
Yeah, you're there. Any last thoughts on Magma?
Is there anything more to add? Probably not. I mean, like, Udu Wudu was fine. It was just different and quite crazy. I do wish I actually recorded a first listen reaction because it was a bit like, what the actual fuck have I got here?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's your first reaction. But the last 7 minutes, I have actually been listening to a lot of Japanese jazz lately that sounds, you know, somewhat similar to this, and so I do vibe with it a lot more, and I actually kind of like it in its absolute craziness.
Well, there you go. There you have it. So that's a Merry Progmas, Rufus.
Well, thank you.
I'm going back up the chimney.
Yeah. I'll see you later.
Off I went again with my prog music zest, this time away to the Pacific Northwest. It was 7 years ago, 21 and 6, when I found myself in a bit of a fix. 'Twas 2 nights before Christmas, and I was checking my Etsy receipts, and I had just received an order which made my heart skip a beat. 2,000 chainsaw statues of bears to be made. Luckily, a magic elf named Rumpelstiltskin came to my aid. At the end of the night I had offered to pay, but she said, "I'll collect your due in 7 years and a day. I don't need your cash or your gold, but this is important. You must bring me 2 songs with a prominent vocal performance." So, I am here to bring some Progmas cheer to Anne. Hello, Anne.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Of course. So, I'm going to take you back in time to 1570, when the court composer of the Tudors, one Thomas Tallis, whipped up this motet. Now, the motet is a Renaissance form of vocal music, usually religious in nature, probably in Latin, and polyphonic, which is a build on the usual, at that time, monastic style of a single melody, kind of like the classic chant. Johannes de Groucho, an aptly named music critic of the time, says about motets, It is not to be appreciated by normal people. It's too subtle and too beautiful. So Thomas Wateridge in 1601, so 30 years later, said of this song, "In Queen Elizabeth's time there was a song sent into England in 30 parts, whence the Italians obtained the name called Apices of the World," so I guess top of the world, "which being a song made a heavenly harmony. The Duke, bearing a great love to music, asked whether none of our Englishmen could set as good a song, and Tallis, being very skillful, was felt to try whether he could undertake the matter, which he did, and made one of 40 parts, that's 10 more parts, and the song was performed in the long gallery of the Arundel House, which so far surpassed that of the other that the Duke, hearing the song, took his chain of gold from his neck and put it around Tallis, saying, 'Very good job.'" And that's roughly how I felt about this song. So we have got Spem in Allium, Hope in Any Other by Thomas Tallis, a 40-part motet.
Had you a chain of gold around your neck, you would have bestowed it upon the grave of dear Tallis.
Gladly, gladly given it to dear Tallis. Boy, oh boy. So I'm bequeathing this song to you this Progmas time, because you are our vocal expert, a resident vocal expert. I don't know much about motets, but this seems like a really good one. Have you thoughts?
So the version I listened to was the King Singers, which are a go-to of Renaissance era recordings. You led with the quote of it being too subtle for the common ear to appreciate fully.
Yep.
Can you read that quote again?
"It is not to be appreciated by normal people. It is too subtle and too beautiful."
I hate that. I hate that.
I mean, to be fair, his name is Johannes de Groucho, and he's a Renaissance music critic, but go on.
I think this is a piece of Renaissance era music that can be appreciated by anyone.
Oh, yeah.
It is so beautiful and simple. And the concept of the round, right? The singers singing the same melody, layering on top of each other, starting at different times. I mean, we still do that now. That's still a very common theme that you see. And it's effective. It's incredibly effective in building emotion, building, I don't want to say tension because that has like a negative connotation, but this like...
It crescendos.
Yeah, it builds in such a beautiful way. I don't think it takes a classical musician to be able to appreciate a piece of music like this.
No, so I guess to kick it off, the structure is that it is a 40-person choir split in 8 mini choirs, each of which starts this kind of choral melody, which, as you say, is then sung in a round, which I guess for the layman is row, row, row your boat, where you start a thing, then middle of the next line, the next group starts and the next group starts. I think it does help a lot that it's in Latin, so it feels like it's just a big old wash of beautiful melodies. And I think as you add each of the 8 mini choirs into the mix, you are getting counterpoints, you're getting new harmonies, and as you say, it has this very natural build.
Yes, those are all accurate things.
Yeah.
One of the thoughts I had listening to it, unfortunately, was I wish I could have been there. No, I don't, because it would have been a terrible time to be a woman. But I wish I could have heard it in its original, I guess, singer formation, because it would have been prepubescent boys have such a different tonal quality than adult female singers who were singing the soprano most part in this song. You know what? I want to hear this sung by a boys' choir, really.
Yep.
I listened to it mostly recorded by adult groups, which is good and is fine, but there's something so pure and beautiful about a boy soprano. This era of songs, that's what it was written for.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it also probably takes it up a notch if you're actually in a medieval hall or whatnot. I imagine it bouncing off the stone and all that sort of stuff really takes it up a notch.
I mean, this was back when they would build... The architecture of buildings was literally designed around acoustics.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever done that in the U.S., but in, parts of Europe.
They're preparing for this.
Yeah, that's a key component when they're designing places of worship or other buildings for performances.
And I was going to say, that's an interesting point that, you're saying that this is a type of song that actually can be easily enjoyed. So I'll admit, having done a Renaissance music deep dive a time or two in my life, there's a lot of Renaissance music that just sounds like Renaissance music. Like it sounds like you've got a little traveling minstrel with his little lute. I think this, when it's choral, it feels timeless.
I think the concept of being divinely inspired transcends time.
Yeah.
And we could argue about whether these composers were divinely inspired or inspired by large purses or threats to have their heads removed. There's lots of reasons why these composers wrote the music they did. But I think this is the type of music that people want to sing when they join choral groups.
Yeah.
This is the type of music people imagine that they will sing in church choirs.
I mean, I think the other thing is that you can't grab onto a melody in this, really. I think it actually is based almost solely on harmony.
Well, there are a few parts in the song where they all come together, right? Where we have maybe some rest that has a fermata or a grand pause, but all the choirs come together for a couple sections, moment of silence, and then an explosion of some beautiful chord.
I guess one final fact that I had about this, just because it delighted me. So Queen Elizabeth gave William Byrd, another composer, and Thomas Tallis, this guy, a monopoly on the production of polyphonic music. And in the back of my mind, I was like, that's insane. Like the idea that you'd have the IP police knocking down doors if someone decided to sing in harmony or something like that.
That's very Footloose.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it was probably literally a monopoly on the printing of polyphonic music. And then I have no idea, but I was like, I wonder if, because it's obviously a time of religious turmoil, I genuinely wonder if that's so that the censors could check the theology of these motets to make sure that they were not dangerous, the dangerous type of Christian. I actually don't know the history of this. Do write in if anyone does know the history of this.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did you look up the translation of the Latin lyrics?
Yes, I don't remember them.
So the English translation, I have never put my hope in any other but in thee, God of Israel, who canst show both wrath and graciousness, and who absolves all the sins of man in suffering. Lord God, creator of heaven and earth, regard our humility.
Okay.
Respice humilitatem nostrum, which I thought, I don't know, I've sung a lot of Latin, and I've never sung that line before, regard our humility. So I don't know, that would be interesting to kind of dive into the religious turmoil that was undoubtedly happening at this time, and to what extent these lyrics play into that. Yeah.
I know for sure, because obviously the King James Bible is literally just around the bend from this song. And obviously that is a unbelievably complex religious political process, translating the Bible into English. And that was this era. And I guess for those at home, that's the Bible we all know and love with the thous and the these. Yeah, so I'd be willing to bet that, especially if this is to be performed for a noble/clerical audience, you'd probably want it to be up to snuff. And I guess that's something else to think about this song and motets generally, is I guess that's what old Johannes de Groucho was getting at the top, is this is not music for common people. And I hope now it's music for common people. I want you all to enjoy the song. But, to get a 40-person choir, to train them in whatever's going on here, to have a hall to perform in, that's probably pretty expensive and unusual. And so you've got your folk songs for the people, and you've got these complicated 40-person choirs for the well-to-dos in this era.
That almost puts a different spin on this last line that Tallis was writing to the nobility and the aristocrats, to remind these powerful people to have humility before God. The other interpretation of this is, so to go back to something you said, prior to this, there was the Italian motet with 30 voices.
Yeah.
And then Tallis comes out with 40 voices and ends it with "Be humble." When you look at it that way, maybe he had a little more attitude and a little more...
I mean, Tallis took it personal.
A little more, almost Kendrick Lamar here, like,
yeah,
dropping the microphone. You wrote 30 parts. Well, check this out. The other thing I wanted to mention is how many modern composers cited Tallis as inspiration. And the one I wanted to mention was Vaughan Williams.
Ah, wow, I can really hear that.
Yeah, and so knowing that I want to go back and listen to some more Vaughan Williams now, and see what I hear with my new ear after listening to this piece.
I was going to say, because he really has a style of, he takes his time. His songs are pretty long, and they build in this kind of same way, where I feel like it's more about the harmony than about the individual melody lines.
I would agree with that.
So, and I guess one final question. I think part of the agelessness of this song is the fact that it's really diatonic. It doesn't sound like there's any crazy harmonies going on. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if it was pentatonic, so just the 5-note scale. I don't actually know, but it sounds like I hear no jarring harmonies whatsoever.
Yes, I would need to listen again before I necessarily said this with a ton of conviction. However, I did not detect any dissonance.
There we go.
No crunchy chords. I think that was common of the time of the Renaissance era, was very much major third. Maybe you get into the minor third.
Sure.
There's no sevenths. You don't get any ninths, really.
They keep it easy.
I mean, they kept it very, very, I don't want to say simple, because it's not, but in terms of the chord structure, it is.
Yeah. So that's Spem in Alum by Thomas Tallis. Any other thoughts on it?
It was a beautiful piece.
So we will touch on Fairport Convention at some point, but briefly, they were a folk rock revival band that added harder edge rock to traditional English folk songs. So the vocal heart of the band was the force of nature, one Sandy Denny. So Fairport Convention peaked in the incredible 1969 album Liege and Leaf, which I promise we will do on this podcast at some point. But Sandy was done with traditional folk songs and wanted to work on her original material. So she left Fairport Convention and started this new band in 1970, Fotheringay. The band was named after the castle in which Mary, Queen of Scots, was held captive. They completed this album that year, and its underperformance spurred her to dissolve the band and start her solo career in 1971. So this song, Nothing More, is a spooky piano ballad off of their one and only album, their debut. And I'm not entirely sure what it's about, but she's obviously singing to someone. And I guess we'll start at the top. What did you feel about the song?
I liked this song. I like the folk rock genre in general. I'm big on getting people to feel things, and I think music is a great way to inspire self-reflection and spark emotions within listeners that they may not otherwise take the time to feel. Especially in our society now, we don't really love feeling, especially uncomfortable, right? We like to distract ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
But something about listening to music and the feelings that come from music feels more cathartic.
Okay, yep.
So I imagine I would have loved this song even more as a younger woman.
Okay.
In my teens, 20s. That feeling of being misunderstood and suffering and like the world doesn't understand.
Okay, interesting.
Interesting. What?
No. I was gonna say no. I'm curious to hear what. So I don't have a specific answer to what I think this song is about, because I think it's pretty abstract. But then the interesting thing is she's shooting like emotional arrows left, right, and center. So I don't know what I would have thought of this song as a teenager. I mean, even now I feel powerfully about it. But go on.
Oh, I just imagine this song would resonate with teenagers especially. My friend, I know you've suffered, although you are still young. Why was it you'd not take help from anyone? That's such a young person's perspective, I think.
Sure.
Or you know what? I shouldn't say that's a young person's perspective. That is I'm going to probably offend people, but that's an immature outlook to have on life, to not accept help from others, to self-isolate. And because I get the sense that whomever she's speaking to is, despite facing hardships, really leaning into self-reliance.
Yeah.
Not accepting help from others. And that is, I think, a fairly immature outlook to have on life, to not accept help.
I will agree with you on that. Yeah, that's my feeling is that she's singing to someone in distress or pain. And I know what you're saying is that she's asking, like, why won't you accept help? And then later she says, these pearls, I've shown you these pearls, and I guess I've shown you these nice things, but you can't seem to take them. I read that on an intrapersonal level. I wonder, A, if she's singing to herself or something, because she's obviously just left Fairport Convention because she needs to fly. So she's just left the band that basically made her. Is she wondering, why can't I accept nice things? Conversely, I have heard that it might also be a song to Richard Thompson, who was the guitarist for Fairport Convention. And, maybe she's singing the same type of thing to him, is like, why can't you accept help? Why can't you appreciate the good things?
I'm more likely to believe that second story.
Yeah.
Because especially the metaphor of pearls in the hand that are beautiful but not shared, I feel could symbolize, I guess, thoughts and feelings, aspects of your personality, right? And your humanity that you may let people glimpse of, but ultimately you don't
actually share
them with others. Yeah. And whereas writing a song like this takes a level of vulnerability that I think the person that she's speaking to in this song is not capable of expressing.
And that's why I read that as both ways, where it's either she's singing to her old bandmate, like, you have all of these nice things and you don't want to share them, or she's singing to herself. And I guess I read it maybe as an artistic shyness thing. And again, I would accept pretty much any interpretation, but as in, like, I've got all of these nice pearls to show the world. Why is it that I don't share them? So something that I believe you have previously said that folk does so well is that it evokes emotion. And Sandy Denny is one of the best of the best of the best. I don't know if you've had any interaction with Sandy Denny before. As you can hear, her voice is powerful, and I personally think she does what folk musicians do so well, as in they wrap their mouths around the word and really bring something out of just the words. And I think it helps that this is her song as well. Any thoughts on her vocal stylings?
Yes, I did some research into this vocalist, and the description that I kept staring at was people wanting to describe her voice as haunting, which got me thinking about that word and what it takes for someone to describe a vocal performance as haunting.
Okay,
And because the word is applied to so many different vocal types, right? It's not limited to a specific gender or range in terms of octaves. It's very much about the delivery of the words and connecting to the lyrics. It seems to be, in order for something to be haunting, it's as if the listener feels that the vocalist is singing these words from their soul, whatever that means to you. At least that was kind of what I was thinking. It's like connecting with the words, which is, as a vocalist, something I always try to do, and I find it intolerable when vocalists do not connect to the words. That's probably my biggest pet peeve, is when something is technically perfect, and yet it's clear the singer has no connection to the words.
They're just getting through the song.
They're singing the notes correctly, and that's great, and their tone is great, but there's no feeling.
I remember watching, I believe it was the 12th night, whatever, one of the Shakespeare plays as performed by ninth graders back in, back when I was in ninth grade. And that's what I always think of that type of singing, when it's like you're just getting through the words, but you don't know what you're saying. And that's what an empty vocal performance can feel like, where it's like you're just surviving. You're literally just getting through the page. And then I think when you watch Shakespeare performed well, then it's like they know what they're saying and they put just the right inflection. And it's a whole, I mean, in this case, vocal thing, but in a play, like a whole body language situation where they're bringing all of themselves to each word or whatever it is. I was actually thinking about Haunting. I was like, what is it? You know, I like what you said about the singer almost singing from their soul almost to your soul. And I think in a sense, like taking it back to literally being haunted, as in when the song's over, the song still sits in the room with you.
It affects your emotional state past listening to it. Yeah.
And I think this specific song, even when the song's done and I don't remember exactly what the lyrics were, I'm put into a space, and that was her doing.
It lingers.
It lingers like a ghost.
Yes.
And fair props to everyone else in this band, because I actually think musically the band took it up a notch, because I actually think it's a really eerily orchestrated song. On one hand, it feels like it's kind of off-kilter, like the drums kind of skip along, and the guitars and piano kind of whip in and out. And then I also feel like everyone's playing behind a beat, because I think it starts in the middle of a measure or something. I don't know. It starts off-kilter and it feels off-kilter. And again, I think it really helps bring whatever that emotion is out of the song.
This kind of sense of maybe unease.
Yeah. And I think whatever we eventually decide what the song's about, I think the thing we can agree on is it's some sort of tension, and whether or not that's like some sort of unhealthy self-reliance, whether or not that's artistic shyness, whatever you want to call it, whether or not it's artistic dissatisfaction, I'd say the song is about some sort of tension, and maybe it's within her, maybe it's between her and someone else. It's about tension, and the song creates tension.
It does, but it's also feels okay. No, I do like the background, and it truly is background, right? The thing about folk music is it is so driven by the lyrics.
Yep.
I think.
No, that's probably true. Yeah. Yeah. So that was Nothing More by Fotheringay. Any other thoughts about it?
I always like it when there's no repeats. And folk music does this a lot. Just continues telling you the story. There's no chorus. We don't have a repeating refrain. Even the title of the song is only sung once. And yet it still feels cohesive and connected.
I mean, it feels, again, even if it's not about a specific obvious thing, it does feel like a story. And I think she succeeded in her dream of having really, really nice original music. So
definitely. It's unfortunate she disbanded after this album. This band was no more. Why did you pick this for Progmas?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Why did I pick this for Progmas? It's unusual. I picked it for you because of it, like the vocals are ridiculous. And I feel like to introduce the prog world to Sandy Denny, I want the vocal expert of this podcast. She's a vocal force of nature, and we will eventually talk about Legion Leaf. And I think in Legion Leaf's case, a actually traditional set of English folk songs and then jazzing them up circa 1969, I don't want to say is a super prog thing to do, but it's a pretty prog thing to do. Interestingly, the producer, I believe, was the same producer for early Pink Floyd, if memory serves. They're all in the same kind of world, and I actually think there's a unusual folky Englishness that actually does probably tie the world of the Canterbury scene and Syd Barrett to this kind of neo-English trad world.
Well, it definitely has a different history. I mean, the name of the band itself, so.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think that's the Obviously, they're calling back literally to the olden medievally times. I think actual Prog just hints at it ever so slightly. So there you go. That was Fotheringay with Nothing More, featuring the electric Sandy Denny. So off I go to bring my final Prog gift to young Ryan. I'll see you later. Going back up the chimney. I looked at the time. Oh my, it was late. So away to the woods of Washington State, in a small house in Forks, by the light of a lamp, our very own Ryan, the broody teen vamp. And through the window I saw that his skin did a twinkle, so I hopped down the chimney with some Prog to a sprinkle. So ho ho ho, I have come down my final chimney. Hello, Ryan.
Top of the Christmas.
The top of the Christmas to you.
As they say.
I visited all the other little Proglets, and I was thinking, because you're the master of Prog, and I was like, what do I give the man who has everything?
If I have everything, then we're in trouble.
Well, I was like, what's at the very bottom of this bag? And it's not coal. It's, in fact, Gentle Giant. So we will do Gentle Giant in greater depth one of these days, but briefly, they were formed in 1970 by the Shulman brothers, Derek, Phil, and Ray, bolstered by multi-instrumentalist Kerry Meniere, guitarist Gary Green, and drummer John Weathers. So their trademark is the complex, jazzy, classical compositions, bolstered with bursts of surprisingly normal classic rock breakdowns, and their other absolutely obvious standout attribute was their rampant multi-instrumentalism, which gives the band a very odd orchestral quality, with instrumental lines weaving in and out of their crazy little songs. So they ticked along, creating somewhat of a cult following, but as I'm sure you can hear by this song, they never became much more than a cult band. So this album, Interview, comes in 1976 and is a concept based around an interview with the music press. So the band were in their 3-year process of disintegrating, and this album is pretty disjointed, but this song, I Lost My Head, is probably the best song that represents most of what makes them great. So it has the troubadour madrigal nonsense at the top, and then kind of a jazz rock breakdown. So it hovers twixt Kansas and King Crimson. And whilst they're probably some of the most out there prog we'll ever talk about, they really have warmed on me. So I'm looking forward to talking about them in greater depth at some part in the future. But I bring you today, I Lost My Head by Gentle Giant. So I guess right at the top, I think you can hear it's a song in 2 parts.
Very much so.
So the troubadour, tinkly-dinkly bit, and then a pretty righteous breakdown in the second half there. So Gentle Giant, at first I was like, are they King Crimson's King Crimson?
No.
No, but I was like, actually, they're very, very composed. So talk to me about King Crimson's King Crimson.
Well, I went into this, admittedly, never having really listened to them. They were not part of my prog repertoire by any means. And so I went into this asking myself, okay, why weren't they more popular?
I don't know if that's rhetorical, but go on.
I turn on this song and I go, oh, that's why. Okay, in one song, which you're correct, their creative powers are waning and they're not getting along anymore. They like you said, it's a long slow decline. But being that this is the beginning, I can hear it. I'm like, oh, okay, it's just angular enough, but it doesn't. My thought is that it wouldn't appeal to any of the people that King Crimson, ELP wouldn't necessarily appeal to any of them. I would say they are jack of all trades and absolutely master of none. And I think now doing a little bit more reading about their history and who they were, it all makes sense now. I do love that quote where it's like the band states their aim is to expand the frontiers of contemporary popular music at the risk of becoming very unpopular.
Well, albeit.
Which self-fulfilling prophecy right there. And just given how like disjointed this song is, it kind of is a microcosm of how just disjointed they are as a group. I mean, the Shulman brothers were originally, I read they considered themselves blue-eyed soul singers. So that's right off the bat an odd choice. And you highlighted their multi-instrumentalism. I did some reading about how they would even switch off instruments in the middle of a performance. And while they were all very good at this,
there is a music video for this song, and you can see them trading instrumentals in the song. It is wild to watch, and it would probably have made for a very good stage show.
Yeah.
But you are absolutely right that I think they're too soft to be King Crimson. They're too earthy to be Yes. There's just too much in there, actually. And I think actually at the beginning, you can hear one of their trademarks, which is not just playing 4/4. They refuse to just play 4/4. So the beginning part with all the little tinkling and dinkling, it's like they're always missing a beat in the line, and it means you can never relax. As you kind of talked about with their quote, it's almost as if they don't want you to relax.
Exactly. It's like it's on purpose, which is funny because they also talk about like later in their career, like, sure, it would have been cool to be as popular as Genesis or Yes. I don't remember who made this remark though about like, but I don't know if we should have been lumped in with the progressive rock crowd or crew or what have you. We shouldn't have been part of that scene.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Because while they did not want to do anything that resembled, Four on the Floor or, any kind of something resembling pop music structure or even just classic rock structure, they chose not to write the big, long...
The magnum opus. Yep.
Yeah. Yes, being both the masters and the disasters of that particular... The Gentle Giant was like, no, we're not doing that. We're not going to write a song that takes half a side or the whole side.
I mean, but then it's funny because they write these 5-minute songs that feel like they're 20 minutes long anyways.
That's a good point. They feel much longer than they are.
Because I was going to say, this song is in fact 7 minutes long, but this feels like you've been on as much of an adventure. But we will eventually talk about earlier in their career. All of their songs are these multi-part odysseys. But then here's the funny thing. So we've just talked about how weird and unusual they are. And I even laugh because they can't even clap their hands like normal people. Because at the end of this song, there's a polyrhythmic hand clap build. And I'm like, God darn it, you guys, like, can't you just like clap normally? But no. No, so we've talked about how odd they are as people. The fascinating thing for me is that the vocals and the lyrics are really normal.
Lyrics, yes. Vocals, I don't know. I think they've got a little bit of that, at least early Genesis, that Peter Gabriel, sprightly nonsense that's very theatrical and very... I don't know how else to describe it, but it is.
I forget who sings which half of the song. There's kind of the beginning part where it's hoo-hoo-hoo, as you say. But then the second half where it's like a pretty normal classic rock. And actually, in a general sense, it's a pretty normal classic rock build. And it's like, I think that is the interesting thing, is it's like, they do want to be enjoyable. They don't want to anger us. Which is then funny, because I think King Crimson specifically did want to anger people. Like, I think they did want to challenge us. Whereas I think Gentle Giant wanted to delight us. They just tripped.
Well, this is probably unfair. I'm just projecting my own thoughts on things, but I feel like King Crimson, I don't know if they wanted to challenge people. I think they were literally just having fun improvising. And if anyone wanted to listen, they were cool with it. Whereas Gentle Giant are like, no, we want to impress people with our virtuosity.
I mean, God, it must just torture you if you have that musical mind. It's like, I have to do this. But yeah, we'll do a deep psychological dive into King Crimson in season 2, so that's upcoming. But the psychological part to this song, so this album is a concept album, which is the band undergoing a interview by the music press. And this is the final part where they're expressing some sort of frustration, is the gist of what I got the song to be about. And I was actually wondering if their relationship to the world of showbiz is actually a very interesting one as a poorly understood cult band. If you're Led Zeppelin, you could have a contentious relationship, but you're the undisputed kings of stadium rock.
Oh, yeah.
I think at this level, and I actually wonder what their relationship with the music press was like.
I know the Shulman brothers talked about how overall the business of music was something they very much did not enjoy. And I think the press is part of that, because if you really want to have any hope of, having a smash record, that you're going to have some press involved there, right? Somebody's got to get the word out. other than you.
I think, on a money pressures thing, because I know that Yes didn't even make that much money, even when they were a massive band. I mean, I'm sure they made more money than I make, but, they're not making private jet money. And that's Yes.
Now, was that because of popularity or like a lack of it? Or is that because of, we don't really care for the business of this. We're going to let our management do whatever, and whatever happens, happens.
I honestly don't know which way it went. I would suspect probably a little bit of both. Because, I think it costs a lot to put on massive shows.
Oh my God, yes.
Then you do make a lot of money, but then that money goes into some giant kind of corporation pot. So you become the Yes Corporation. And, this is what Bill Bruford was chatting about with 5% for Nothing, where you have managers just taking money. And that's that. And so, yeah, I wonder if your money also just kind of disappears. And, to be fair, this is what the Beatles said at the end of the run of the Beatles, is that you're doing work more than you're doing fun. And that sucks.
Well, especially if you are touring in that kind of capacity. Turning that performance in night after night, that's real work. It is hard.
Yep. No, and so I think you put in time and effort, you put in financial whatever, and, I think it's rare that you become the Led Zeppelins who are making buckets of money.
Well, do you think if interview is supposed to be they're somewhat disgruntled or even just mildly gruntled, talking to the press, do you think they wanted to be more popular and were frustrated that they weren't?
Wow, I didn't know we were going to get to this on a Progmas episode, but I think this is true for all musicians. I think there's some who are just literally chasing fame and will easily do that, and that's that. Mm-hmm. And then some are chasing some sort of artistic truth, whatever you want to call that, but you want someone to listen. Like, you're not doing artistic truth or else you'd stay in your room. Like, you are hoping that your music will connect with someone, or your art in a general sense. So you go out on the road and you try and create these songs, and you hope your artistic truth touches a soul out there.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's many bands that truly don't want to be listened to. And I even think, obviously Kurt Cobain wanted to be listened to, but then freaks out if you get listened to by too many people. There's a massive tension on one side of the musical spectrum there. Short answer, I'm sure Gentle Giant probably wanted fans. And they have some. As I say, they did a pretty sharp trade as a cult band, and will absolutely be doing a deep dive into their career in the future. So, there you go.
So to answer your question, I do not think they are King Crimson's King Crimson. I don't even hear a similarity. And I don't think they're trying to do the same things. I just don't.
I would say, I think because of the kind of jazz plus rock plus complicated classical stuff, I think that was my initial flavor reaction. But no, you're completely right. I think they are super composed, almost in a Yes sense, with the layered harmonies and complicated rhythms and stuff. And you're right. I think King Crimson obviously were for the hyper improv.
Well, I think what may have contributed to their dissolution as a band too is that kind of hyper composed, unbelievably regimented. Because to be like that, to be able to throw instruments to each other and just keep on rocking and have this incredibly multi-layered recorded side of your music, that sounds exhausting. How long could you possibly keep that up with 4, 5, 6 guys who inevitably are going to, their creative juices are not always going to flow the same direction or be the same flavor either. That's going to burn them out. That's so hard to keep up with.
No, you're right. It's probably a combustible mix.
I can loop things around. I did enjoy this song. I would listen to it again. It's not it might have sounded at the beginning like I was dunking on them a bit with the whole, this is why they weren't popular remark, but it doesn't mean I didn't like it.
Oh, no. I was going to say, I think they are at the edge of prog. And I think if you can come with us up to the, King Crimson Gulf, you can jump across it, Evel Knievel style, to the Gentle Giant Plateau.
Which is funny because there's no motorcycles allowed over there. They're loud and unpleasant.
They destroy the polyrhythms.
So that's so funny. The idea that they can't even clap normally.
Oh, so there you go. That is Gentle Giant's I Lost My Head. So a Merry Progmas to you, and I'm going to touch my nose and zoom up this here chimney. Bye, Ryan. I had arrived back at home. 'Twas a wonderful night. I had dropped off the songs. It had been such a delight. The tree was a-twinkling, and I was full of Progmas cheer, when I heard a knock at the door, and who should appear? A group of carolers in Dickensian threads, and leading the choir was our very own Ed. "You've brought us some songs," he sang out with glee. "Now here's some more prog rock from my collection to thee." So hello, Ed.
Hi there.
I heard tale that you had Progmas songs for me. So what do you got?
Yeah, so I thought, let's talk about something a little bit different. So
Okay.
I was thinking about some kind of outliers and like what makes them outliers. You know, as we've been doing this, I was like, we could get in the weeds about what is prog and who are prog and where does prog come from. And it got me thinking about, you know, people that don't really come up very often.
Yeah.
And I actually got quite a long list. So I thought, okay, who are the ones that kind of sum up the differences? So, you know, a lot of what we listen to all seems to come from England for a start, and from very specific bits of England sometimes, you know, and I think that's quite interesting. So
the south of England.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, what about, now I do have an Englishman.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll start with that and then we'll get past
and
then we'll get past the Englishman. So this one's an outlier because there's nothing prog about this guy. It's Elton John.
Woo! Yep.
Well, it was just, obviously, you know, Elton plays piano and he has some chops, and occasionally he delves into a little world that you don't expect. So yeah, there's Elton John, Out of the Blue, from the album Blue Moves. Now, this song comes on after Sorry seems to be the hardest word, which is a song.
Yeah, a classic Elton song.
Even if you're not, like, I'm not an Elton John fan, but I know that song very well, and it's just a testament to great songwriter. But you don't expect what comes next on that album, and yeah, it's just a full-on prog fest. He's just taking you on a mad journey, and I was just like, I just heard it, and I was quite surprised by it. I'd never heard it before, and I was just like, huh. I wonder what Ian would make of this jazzy little treat, you know.
Yeah, so my first impressions about this, I've heard, obviously, the album Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and then all of his hits. So that's basically my experience of Elton John. I, of course, love Elton John in that context. But I'm used to his songs, which are pretty, you know, they're like lighters up in the air, ballady songs. So this was a very interesting, I guess, as you say, kind of proggy freak out. I think what fascinates me is when predominantly non-instrumental artists let their hair down into an instrumental song. So I could hear, interestingly, bits of Zappa in this, but like soft Zappa, not challenging Zappa, because he doesn't freak out really. This is a pretty normal, I don't want to say disco song, but like mid-70s soft rock song, except it's pretty bouncy, and then of course it's an instrumental, and it's a 6-minute long instrumental. So I really liked the song. What was interesting is then I continued to listen to the rest of the album. So reading the backstory and reading into this album, one of the articles was like reappraising Blue Moves. And I was like, oh, what needs to be reappraised? I don't know what this is. And it started with, it is a double album that almost derailed his career. And I'm like, oh, you've piqued my interest. Like, that's the exact type of album I want to listen to. So I don't know how like listening to the rest of this, I don't know how you could derail a career with this album. It seemed like a pretty normal album. But I was listening and I was thinking to myself, wow, Elton John can really sing. And then it made me sad about this song because it was like, actually, the selling point of Elton John is his voice. And I was like, actually, now that I've thought that, I was like, I actually want him at the end of this proggy intro to jump into a normal Elton John song.
Yeah. And maybe, you know, that would have been even better, you know. If you listen to the whole album, I think the vibe that comes across is that he's trying to delve a little deeper into his songwriting. He's trying to do things he's not done before. And ultimately, you know, he's luckily, he can't help but write killer songs. So yeah, like you said, there's no way this could derail anyone's career. It's a great it is actually a great album. But I think what happened was they spent a lot of time putting things like this together, and then it was too difficult to play live. It was actually a little bit too tricky to pull off, so they just stopped doing it. I think derail's an interesting choice of words there, because I think, it did kind of send them down a path that they couldn't really pursue. They didn't have their brand, as it were, was not set up for them to do anything other than what they were already doing, you know.
Yeah.
And there was nothing wrong with that. It's just this one little piece, I just thought it just sung out as like, whoa, that's not what I was expecting.
It is a very, very fun song. Listening more to this album, I think I would very much appreciate it in the context, because I got the impression that this is the letting your hair down between Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest Word and whatever the next song after this is, because they're both kind of balladish. So this is the 6-minute little funky freak out.
Yeah, not very Elton John, but
all in all an enjoyable song.
But yeah, different. But there you go. So there was that one. So the non-Brits, and I think that in itself is just interesting. It's just like, why is it such a Britishy thing, the whole prog? And I think the answer is it probably isn't. It's just, I think it might just be the lens we've chosen to look at this stuff from, and maybe the time period that we've been looking at so far.
So why is it a British thing? So I guess there is actually an answer to this. I think it's just how scenes work, and then how scenes work before the internet.
Okay, yeah.
So, you know, why is Southern rock a thing? And why is Southern rock mostly a Californian thing? You know, the Laurel Canyon scene, the grunge scene in the 90s in Seattle, funk, soul, they all have had their like kind of regional thing. And so I think it was that whatever social factors were going on in late 60s Britain made prog rock a thing there, whereas a different set of social factors at the same time in San Francisco, America, made acid rock a thing there. And actually, likewise, the Velvet Underground in New York were this same time.
Yeah.
And again, they're making a different type of weird, freaky counterculture thing.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great answer. And a lot of that kind of avant-garde post-rock, I don't know what you want to call it. Yeah, it all seems to come from that area. Again, it's all in the same place. They probably all know each other, and it's I like that idea. But yeah, there's loads of great prog that comes out of America. It's just not at the same time.
Yeah.
Or like you hear things that are proggy. But yeah, anyway, so Mars Volta, had you heard these guys before?
So Mars Volta is an interesting one. So I have never gotten down with later prog. So Mars Volta is a name I have heard. I'm sure I've heard like a handful of their songs at some point, but they were never a band that grabbed me.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, a friend of mine got me onto these, and I remember when he first played them for me, just being like, no, this ain't for me. Oh, it's too much going on. But seeing how excited he was about them made me want to go back and find out, well, what was it? Because like I really love other things that he listened to, so it was kind of my appreciation for him and how he sort of music that made me think, oh, hang on, I've missed something here. So I went back and listened, and Drunkship of Lanterns is the song I picked here for you, because I think it sums up this band in its proggiest.
Oh yeah, I felt that.
Because they do a lot of things, you know, there's psychedelia in here, there's like jazz, you know, it's kind of math rocky as well.
Oh yeah.
But this one felt kind of like traditional prog, but just with an American flavour. They're all really exciting musicians, and this particular song, like it's from a guitarist perspective, there's like some great sounds, you know, like there's like kind of woolly thick fuzz one minute and then it's shrill the next, and but it's still kind of, I don't know, it's still pleasing to hear, but like maybe there's too much going on for a casual listen, but if you go back and you listen to it again, you hear other bits, and you always hear a new bit because there's so much going on. But I really like this song, and I thought it'd be interesting to hear what you thought of it.
So starting at the top, so I could hear why you're saying this is the closest to prog rock. I did respond warmly, and I think it has all of the kind of aggressive atonality and like fast precision of mid-70s King Crimson. So I could actually hear a lot of the King Crimson in there. I will say it's progressive because it's very unique. Again, this is a type of music I've never really heard elsewhere. Interestingly, it sounds like it's pure chaos, but I don't think it is. I actually think they really thought this through.
I think it comes from a drum first perspective, I think, rather than a lot of other prog.
Yes.
It's like it's more like the keyboard first and then like the drums are kind of supporting that. But no, they're using the rhythm as their anchor. And it's an anchor that's in stormy water, so they're working hard to keep with this ship. It's their ability to do that makes them quite exciting.
This gets full marks in terms of song construction. I thought the beat was fantastic. And then almost like a Radiohead flavor, as you said, with the guitar tones kind of whizzing past your ears or whatever.
Nice.
And then the other thing that I always really rate bands on, just when I was like, okay, I'm actually starting to get sick of this track, they switch it. So the second half, they switch it up. And I was like, actually, when a band knows we've now made our point, we've taken it to the edge of what this musical idea can do, and then they do the next thing, I was like, that is knowing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like a lot's happened. And it's not a particularly crazy long song, but they fit a lot into the time that they've got there.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I dock them for, so I really like his voice in so much as it is a strange voice, and it will stick with me. Mm-hmm. I really miss having a normal melody. And I was going to say, like, the King Crimson I don't like is the atonal King Crimson. The King Crimson I do like is the King Crimson that could have just been a guy singing with a guitar.
Right, yeah.
And I think that was the only thing I really missed in this song, is just having a straightforward melody. Because you're right that the song is anchored by the drums, and that was nice. And then I was just thinking, if only there was just like a nice vocal melody on top.
No, none of that.
Yeah. But you have convinced me to look deeper into them. So.
Yeah, and I think the more you listen, the more I think you probably appreciate Cedric and his singing style. Like he's one of a kind and quite a force of nature.
Oh, that I got. Yeah, that I definitely got.
He is very good. I'm a big fan. Yeah, next one I've got another American, Tori Amos. So I think when I was first buying records ever, Tori had released a debut album like a couple of years. Too soon for me to be aware of, I think. Like, this record was still kind of in the zeitgeist. It's that kind of the more, like, eclectic listeners' cup of tea. But it was, like, a really big album. When you hear her work, you think it's going to be for, like, a more culty audience. Yeah. But you go back to the early 90s when it came out, and it was massive. So there's a song on her debut album, Little Earthquakes, called Precious Things, which I think just sums up her style beautifully. Big drums, lots of ambience. The piano playing is really energetic. It's not tropey. It's not showing off, but there's real thought behind the cadences and the where it takes the harmonies, and nothing's obvious. But it just it's just full of emotion. It just makes such a beautiful springboard for the way she sings, and she sings with such passion. It's quirky. It's kind of there's hurt in there. You can really hear hurt in this voice, and it's a type of virtuosity that's not obvious. When someone is using is painting pictures with emotions rather than just notes.
Yeah.
It's like it's a new type of progressive music, and that's why I find this really interesting, and why it's a little bit of an outlier, because I don't think any of those things really sum up what people think of as prog
rock. Yep.
But to me, this is about as progressive as you can get. You're still in a very musical space, but you're conjuring up using emotion.
Yep.
And I think she does it not just with her music, but with an incredible writing skill as well. Like, it's really relatable, the stuff she's saying, not to me as a man, but if you're, well, I don't know, you have to have a listen to it and let it wash over you. It's incredible. It's incredible stuff. Well, that's how I feel. How do you feel, Ian?
How do I feel? No, so this is actually an album I have heard before. Not as much as I should have. You were right, this song really shines a light on what makes her so good. And it's exactly everything you've said. So lyrics are top notch, and she is just a great lyricist. And then obviously the arrangement in terms of the music is great, but the selling point for sure is how well she puts across emotion, and in this song specifically, rage, by inflecting her vocals. Joni Mitchell and Donovan both came to mind as kind of like they're almost writing diaries with music, and then they wrap their mouths around each word. And it's like they don't just say hello, they give it a little twist so that you really feel what they were trying to say with each word. Combine those with the lyrics and you have a very amazing vocal performance. So I understand how her voice specifically might not be everyone's cup of tea, because it borders on like the Kate Bush high-pitched shrieky kind of. I personally really, really, really like it though.
Yeah, and this is why I see it as such a progressive moment in music, because it's like this is someone who knows how to do all the obvious things, but has chosen to paint a picture with the word.
Yeah.
It's interesting the way you said that, like you wrap your mouth around the word.
Yeah.
You're not just wrapping around the word, it's what that word means. And it's like imparting that emotional thought at the same time. It's spellbinding. And I think it's one of those things you can't just go, oh, I've heard someone do that, I want to copy that and learn how to do it. This is...
Oh, it's a skill, like a skill you got to have.
Yeah, it comes from her being, just really just coming from her being. It's amazing stuff.
It was fantastic. And I think as a debut album, it's such a good debut album, as in I think it lets you into her world, emotionally, obviously, but also musically. Like, I feel like you get a sense of who this Tori Amos character is. So, what a fantastic debut album.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on the specifics of how the album came to be, but I do get the impression that there was this, like, a few alternate iterations of the songs before they were ultimately produced in the way we hear them now, but I think a lot of it did come from her own demos and things.
Yeah.
Just as a solo artist, like how independent she is with her ideas is also very interesting.
Fantastic.
So one last one, Mike Oldfield, Ommadawn. So you say prog, this guy comes to mind straight away. He's not English, so he's a bit of an outlier straight away. But he always works kind of alone, and I know he works with session musicians and stuff quite a bit, but he does so much by himself, yet he's building pieces of music that like encompass so many parts. It sounds like the work of many minds. I've actually grown up with this being like one of my earliest musical memories is hearing this particular album. Part 1, Ommadawn, is like just my favourite. I just thought I had to bring him up. I think he's amazing. I love everything he does, and just curious to speak to you about it and hear what you have to say about Mike Oldfield.
So here we go. So out of the 4, this was the one that obviously grabbed me the most because I like length and I love 70s prog as a soundscape. So the very first thing, I guess this is a disclaimer to those out in podcast land. So obviously we haven't talked about Tubular Bells on this podcast, and we won't. But Mike Oldfield is one of those like famous kings of prog where he locked himself in a studio basically and came up with Tubular Bells, which made Richard Branson's first venture, Virgin Records. So the success of that album. So Mike Oldfield obviously was a successful household name. So I've heard that album, and then I never ventured past that. Because like it's a fine enough album. Like I've got nothing much to say about it, which is why we've not talked about it on this podcast. Thank God for you bringing this to me. So I loved this song. So I guess right at the top, it has this DIY energy that I really get down with on like a personal level. And I think I attempted something like this when I was a little prog baby, because I had my little home recording studio, so to speak. You know, I had my little like microphone under my bed. You know, I had a little keyboard and a little whatever. Like, this is the type of thing I would have tried to do. And the other thing is that he's not a virtuoso, which means that he has to build a song on pure dynamics. And this is something I had talked about with the magic of In the Wake of Poseidon. So In the Wake of Poseidon doesn't end with a solo. And you think about how weird that is. Like, you don't just get away with just having a guitar go dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. You have to build a song on pure dynamics. And actually, the rest of the song is this song, Ommadawn is built pretty much with like, I mean, obviously there's some synth and a little bit of guitar, but it's mostly like acoustic instruments. And I'm always amazed when someone makes a huge layered sound with basically acoustic instruments.
Yeah, he approaches it like a traditional orchestra arrangement, I think. But he's doing it with 70s equipment. As a producer, I think he's just very good at getting a crisp, clean recording of each instrument. And like you say, he isn't a virtuoso. So he instead creates his parts with layers. And his layers are all like, they're just kind to each other. And I think, most people know him for Tubular Bells, and Tubular Bells 2 later on was massive as well. But for me, there's some magic in this melody. It just takes me to dreamland, and I don't know what he's done that's so magic about this, but it's like it's the melody just doesn't go where I expect it to, but it's ever so pleasant.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's almost like a kind of medieval kind of imagery that just floats into my head, but it's just.
I mean, it's the space fairies thing. I think he's doing some folk, and I think because I'm a sucker for anything that sounds like it could be used in Cirque du Soleil. Because I think also that a big thing about this is that there's no vocals. I mean, there's chanting somewhere in the middle, and I love the chanting, but there's also no vocals, so you used to keep your interest on just pure music. And well done.
It's gentle and it's interesting, and it's just interesting, hearing one human brain functioning from start to finish on an album at a time where like people didn't really have access to like home studios. Like it's so normal now, but in the 70s, this really is different.
So I was about to say, I think that's there's two elements here about that. So the first one, he's not in artistic combination with anyone. So Tubular Bells was pretty much just him. This album, I think there's a handful of like session musicians. But actually, it's really interesting, like, as you say, in the 70s, to have a guy basically just locked in his room. And the backstory to this is he got Richard Branson to send him a 24 tape deck to his house to make a home studio. So he had a home studio, which, as you mentioned, is very rare for the 70s. So I think that's one element of like, it's this interesting, he's alone layering stuff by himself. And so it's impressive that, especially in a tape world, that he'd know where everything went. And then I think the other thing is, because of the way vinyls work, I think you have a lot more bravery to just do the 20-minute song. Because I think now you would know that people only want a 2-minute song, whereas in the vinyl days, that even if there are distinct songs, people are just going to put it on A and go all the way to the end. So I actually think it's a really interesting, rare time in human history where you get to hear a man use technology that's not meant for one individual and creating a type of music, in the same way concertos are not like normal music that we do now. I'm sure people write concertos, but they're not like the thing that's on the radio. I think it is actually this really weird little patch of human history where it'll be an interesting little man in his little room making 20-minute songs.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Like, I think that idea as well with the record, like how long the record is, and the fact that you don't have to worry about
flippage.
Yeah, like, just letting a side play. It is interesting because it's like, you can listen to a 3-minute song and that captures your attention. You can hear the whole thing through, give it undivided attention, but you don't always want to do that. And I think that's what's special about records is like that's a really nice amount of time to pay attention. And like you're not thinking, I need to flip that one, get another one on. You're happy to let it play. It does something interesting to your attention span. Yeah, good times.
Even now, and maybe this is just that we're trained for it. I feel like 20 minutes and then another 20 minutes is just the best music will ever be. Yeah,
I still love records. I still buy records. Yep. You've probably noticed every time you'll say, have you heard this? I'll send you a picture of the record.
The record. So
that was all. Yeah, just a little taster of some of the things I've been listening to and
some of the prog treats. Well, I enjoyed them all.
I'm glad you did. There's plenty more, but this will do for this.
Well, that's next Progmas. Yeah, I'll let you go down the to the next house with your prog cheer and let you spread your joy there.
Lovely. Thank you. Happy Progmas, everyone.
Merry Progmas. Prog bless us, everyone. Fabulous. Rick sprang to his sleigh, to his team played a solo, and away through the air like the mint off a polo. And I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, Merry Progmas to all, and to all a good night. So, that is the first year of a sort of young person's guide to prog rock. As always, I have been your host, Ian Prize. Do follow us on Instagram at ProgFrogPod. If you have any longer thoughts, queries, answers, questions, anything, that's helloprogfrog@gmail.com. Merry Progmas, happy holidays, stay safe, and I will see you in the new year.